Hi, I'm Amy and welcome to my channel. This channel is all about merging spirituality and psychology so that you can manifest your dream relationship. And in today's video, I'm going to give you some pointers on how to decipher what's being reflected back to you. Because I often speak to people who are like, this situation's happening and I know it's me, but I've got no idea why it's me. So I'm just going to give you a few pointers on what it is that could be reflected back to you and give you some examples as well. So in my last couple of videos, I covered what the subconscious mirror is and Neville's teaching of the whole vast world is yourself pushed out. And what is important to note is it's yourself being pushed out, i.e. your whole self, all of your fears, all of your beliefs, how you feel about things, all of your judgments. So let's talk about when something's happening and you really want to figure out what it is within you that is manifesting these situations. So the first thing I notice is that when people are trying to manifest a relationship, maybe it's an expat, maybe it's just a specific person or a new person, and nothing seems to be happening. Everything is silence. So the first thing I ask people when they come to me with that is, what are you making this silence mean? And usually it's that the ball's not rolling yet, that I'm doing something wrong, that I'm not chosen or good enough. So this one's fairly easy to figure out. But what if you've already been through that and it's still not showing up? Then we want to go into what need is this going to fill for you. So you are waiting for a text message or a phone call from somebody. What need is that going to fulfill? Because life is very, very good at showing you what your missing needs are. It's very good at showing you where you are lacking or where you think you are lacking in your life. If it is that you're waiting for something to show up, quite often it can be an indicator of that's what I'm lacking, so that's why I want it. And we want to go ahead and try and fill those needs ourselves at least halfway so that we're not pressuring it. We're not overdoing it with manifesting techniques. We're not trying to pressure the manifestation. We want to be in a state of openness, into a state of receiving so that the manifestation can actually come in. The second thing I notice quite often is when people say, and this happened to me, where you have a repeating cycle that you have got no idea how to get out of. And this is particularly frustrating when it comes to relationships. Maybe you have a relationship that's on and off. Maybe you are continuously meeting people that aren't what you want. Maybe there's a particular behavior that people you are dating possess that you don't like. And like I say, this one is particularly frustrating, and I was stuck in an on and off cycle for about 5 years. So when there is a repeating pattern, this is something you should absolutely take notice of. So let's use the example of an on and off again relationship. There will be a certain trigger point where that pattern starts. So the first thing I want you to do is think back to, where does this actually start? And I can guarantee that it would start with you. And with me in particular, it was a small insecurity that was triggered by a perceived criticism. And I would not voice this to my partner. I would hold on to it and it would fester. And because I'd felt criticised, I'd felt inferior, I felt not good enough, I felt not worthy, I would react to this internally. So I wasn't externalizing it. I would keep it in, I would resist it, I would try and keep a lid on this as much as possible because I wanted to avoid conflict. So the fear of conflict was also at play here. And usually what would happen is, fast forward 5 or 6 weeks, and something very small would trigger an overreaction from me. We would argue and the relationship would inevitably end. I would then go into chasing mode, he would go into avoidance mode, and we'd be stuck like that for sometimes months. So this pattern was particularly frustrating. It was really hurtful on both parts. I had to really look at, okay, what's my problem with criticism? Why do I think that that was a criticism? Why did it hurt so much? And this is where inner child work is going to really help you. And I have tons of videos on how to do inner child work and shadow work. So I had to really go into where that came from and heal that within myself and understand that actually it wasn't the same thing. He was just saying that he preferred my hair up instead of down. And when I think about that now, I can laugh at that. But at the time, it was really, really hurtful. It made me feel a certain way. It made me feel like I just was not good enough. So yes, the first thing was I had to understand why criticism was particularly painful for me, and why I was particularly sensitive to it. Not that there was anything wrong with that. I was very careful not to judge myself for it. I was just going in with a curiosity as to where that came from, so that the next time it happened, I could either vocalize and say, hey, you know, when you say that, it really makes me feel like I'm not good enough. Or I could rationalize it in my own head and release it instead of keeping a lid on it. And once I'd managed that, the pattern started to break. So when you've got a pattern like this, the trick is to try and intercept it where you can, and don't judge yourself for it. So say I had reacted to a criticism and the ball was rolling. So say we were going through that pattern again. So a thought came up that I believed, which started the pattern again. It resurrected the pattern. And say I hadn't intercepted it at that point. There are several points within that pattern that I could intercept it. For example, taking space. And I'm a massive advocate of taking space. But if you're anxiously attached, the idea of taking space is not going to make you feel amazing. It's not, but it's actually going to help you. It's going to help you rationalize what's going on. It's going to help you put in a plan of how to actually break this toxic pattern. The next thing I could have done was stop chasing, allow the space, come together again and resolve it together. So it's important to remember that the easiest way to break a pattern whilst it's happening is to respond differently. So notice that it's happening and think to yourself, how can I act differently this time? Because you're not going to have time to sort of go within and think, well, you know, what do I believe about me? Why is this happening? You can act differently in the moment to stop that pattern, and then go away and think, well, actually, why did I feel that statement bothered me so much? Why did I feel so criticized at the time? And the third thing is notice what your judgments are towards other people. So let's say, for example, you've got a specific person and they're not committing to you, and you're saying that they're non-committal, that they're a commitment phobe, and whatever it is that you label them as. And the reason why it's so important to notice what your judgments are about other people, and this is a really unpopular opinion, but the reason why you're judging it is really that you're projecting your own self onto them. Before me and my partner lived together, I would label him as a commitment phobe, and I would have shouted that from the rooftops. I was 100% certain that he was a commitment phobe, and he was a commitment phobe. It wasn't that I was lying to myself. That is how he presented. But it wasn't until I noticed that my judgments were actually judgments towards myself. And the reason why I was projecting it onto him was so I could avoid the internal work. And actually, it was my commitment phobia that was being reflected out. I was in fact concerned about being in a relationship where we lived together, because the last time didn't go that well. I was concerned about being with somebody forever. I was worried about not having my own space. All these things that I had said that he was doing, actually it was me that was the instigator. So when you're noticing judgments towards other people, think, okay, where is that in me? And it might be incredibly subtle. It might be a really small part of you that does it. But it is well worth noticing that your judgments towards other people aren't hurting other people. They're just hurting you, because you're not going inside yourself to see where that judgment comes from and how you might do things the same way. And what this does is it really helps you start seeing that person as you. And when you can do that, I'm not saying you have to do it 100% of the time, because I don't think that that's possible. But when you do that, what you will discover is unconditional love for the other person. When you see them as you will have that feeling of deep connection. You will have that feeling of unconditional love, because you know that they are just reflecting you. So I hope you found that video helpful. If you want to ask any questions, put them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them, and I will see you in the next video.